Former State Representative Peter Breen is the Executive Vice President and Head of Litigation for the Thomas More Society, a not-for-profit national public interest law firm based here in Chicago and dedicated to restoring respect in law for life, family, religious liberty, and election integrity. Think about it, without election integrity, our religious freedom, our freedom of conscience will quickly erode. Peter Breen.
Thank you. Thank you, Monty. And folks, it is always good to be with you, particularly on, just with everything going on right now. But I do think it befits us to maybe just step back a little bit, get the founding principles in, to always, kind of continue to go back to those. And obviously, what are we here to do? What would Jesus do? In answering that question, we turn to the gospel, we turn to the parables, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. But those all give us, and they give us the places to which we're supposed to aspire. But then we are to reflect. We are to meditate, we're to pray. And that really is where the difference comes in for those of us who are Christians versus kind of our secular pursuits, things that go on in the world. And then we act. And it's that part, that's where the First Amendment comes in. And so, contrary to those that would say we're not a Christian nation, this is a deeply religious nation that we were gifted by our founders. They were, and even those who weren't necessarily even going to church on a regular basis, all recognized, all of them honored, the fact that we are endowed by our Creator. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the Declaration of Independence itself specifically assumes a creator, and it is written by those who are created. So they are in relation there. As one of my old seminary professors said, one of the key points to holiness is the recognition that He is God and I am not. So that's thank you, Dave Smith, for clapping for that one for me. Okay. And so, there's a different point here, too, that is different here in the United States than really anywhere else in the world, is that the free exercise of religion is not an act of toleration. And George Washington himself made that point in 1790 in a letter written to the Jewish congregation of Newport, Rhode Island. And he said in this letter, I'll quote it, "The citizens of the United States of America have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it were the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support." And George Washington continued. So that was a year after our Constitution was adopted. He wrote that, a year later. And in his farewell address, "Let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason, and experience, both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principles." So please, don't let anyone tell you that we were not founded by, and at least in furtherance of, that Christian worldview, a very religious worldview. Now I want to, that's 250 years ago, that we were almost 250 now. We're coming up on our a big anniversary here in a couple of years. But in the last 60 years, we've made great strides in the free speech jurisprudence. So that part of the First Amendment at the Supreme Court. And in New York Times versus Sullivan, that's kind of a place where we who are in this field as lawyers look very, very strongly. Because in that case, the Supreme Court upheld that fact that a profound national commitment to the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, and that it may include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials, something that our distinguished guest and I have never experienced, so in our time as government officials. So So here's the thing. But of course, this isn't a call for attacks on anybody, but it's a summons to speak for the good news. It's to proclaim the good news in the public square. And so, not to toot our little horn at Thomas More Society, but one of the things we've done is we've been the lawyers for the American Nativity Scene Project, and we ourselves got it going here in Illinois. And I'll tell you, folks, we are up to, at last count, I believe about 44 of the 50 state capitals. We now have a nativity scene up at right around Christmas time, and so that's a big deal. And I'll tell you, it took a little doing at first because they were saying, "Oh, this is establishment of religion. You can't do that. That's banned." But no, it's free speech in the public square. And so that's why we talk about religious values cannot be banished from the public square but must be celebrated. Now, as to the free exercise clause, so that's one that had been a little bit neglected. We were doing really well on free speech for the last 60 years or so, but free exercise, really, it needed to kind of be dusted off, and folks were, when I was in law school, we didn't get a lot of education on parts of the Constitution because there just wasn't a lot of law on it, at least not a lot of pertinent recent law. And in part, we as Christians, we were the majority. We didn't really need it. We run everything. Everybody respected us. Well, all of a sudden, we are still the majority, but for whatever reason, we've now been, the government's decided to really get after us. Now, I would also toot the horn of everyone here in this room in Illinois, because the case law that started to develop and the response that happened really in the last 10 years or so, and it started back in events that occurred in 2011. One of the key points, really quiet key points in the national development of this, the response and the positive flow of the free exercise clause, was when the state of Illinois, our Roman Catholic governor and our Roman Catholic Attorney General got together and decided to refuse to allow the Catholic charities of the state of Illinois to perform foster care. There were 4 dioceses doing it at the time. They had over 2,000 children under their care. And these providers were the top-ranked providers in the state. Top-ranked. If you had just taken those children and compared them as if they were an entire state, the Catholic charities were running a foster care system larger than the foster care systems of 13 states. Well, and it was all because there were no complaints, but it was because the Catholic charities wouldn't recruit same-sex couples, or actually any unmarried couples, anyone who wasn't married. They wouldn't recruit them in. Cared for everybody. Again, no complaints. No one was ever turned away or in any way wronged, but the state wanted to score political points against the Christians. And so, and I was there. I was there in shouting matches with members of the bureaucracy here in the state of Illinois, and it was a horrible, horrible time. There was a moment, and it wasn't really widely reported, but I have a little time on my timer here, so I'm going to tell you about it, where we had won a temporary restraining order in Sangamon County Circuit Court, but then we lost the preliminary injunction, so we had to go up on appeal. And we're moving fast. But the state decided to cut us off at the knees. They said, we're going to transfer every single child in your system, click the button on the computer, and change the agency to which all of your foster parents and all of your foster children are assigned. And it wasn't just any agency. They were going to assign them to agencies that had no offices or staff in the relevant areas. And oh, by the way, there were agencies that were ranked down somewhere past 100. There were a couple hundred agencies in the state. The Catholic charities were up top 10. The four agencies were up in the top 10 altogether. And they were going to give them, so essentially to the lowest ranked agencies, many in Chicago to serve kids all across the state. And they were just going to do it like that, to force us out. So it was a vicious, vicious time. But there was a bright spot. Our folks here in Illinois, and especially the Catholic bishops here, went back to their colleagues in D.C., and when they would go to these meetings, they'd tell them what happened. And around that time, you had a bishop's committee on religious liberty, and I don't remember the official title. And you started to see, they were telling people what was happening. And there were some similar stories happening in other parts of the country. It just wasn't as vicious and widespread as had happened right here at home. And that effort caused folks to get ramped up, at least inside the Catholic Church and then their brethren throughout the Christian communities, so that when the gay marriage fights came, we responded. We might not have won in the courts, but we certainly were vigorous in responding. And what happened, then a few years later, you get the Hobby Lobby decision. Supreme Court upholds the rights of Christians to reject abortifacients, things that we believe and do terminate the lives of very young children. Now, I will say there's more of a bright spot. In 2021, finally the U.S. Supreme Court upheld our position. We were a little early, unfortunately, but they allowed it was the Catholic Social Services, I believe is what they call them, of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia to maintain their historic work in foster care. And so allowed that, and Fulton versus City of Philadelphia is just, now that's a beautiful precedent that we're going to use not just there, but in many areas of the law. Now, I will say there's a little complaint from the other side. The law scholars will sit there and go, well, none of your cases are too, they're not establishing huge principle. Well, I got to tell you, when you have case after case after case after case at the Supreme Court every single year from about 2014 to now, and you win them all, it sends a little bit of a message to the lower courts and to the bureaucrats and others that go, ooh, do I really want to mess with them? And I got to tell you, too, during COVID, obviously we all felt that. We at Thomas More Society were honored to be able to get the churches open here in Illinois by suing the pants off of Pritzker until he finally just gave up, But there were a couple other governors that were not, I will give our governor his due. He was smart on that one. He was politically smart. His colleague in California and others in the Northeast were not quite so smart. And so we had a nice multi-million-dollar check written to us from the people of the state of California. We had to lay the money out first, so it wasn't like, it's kind of more, not like it's but still, it was painful for them. And so we're winning these fights. And so that's why I want to give you that little bit of a positive thing that's going on. David wanted me to mention the latest things coming in Springfield, and you will see. They are turning us into the abortion capital of the country. And they are, really, we've historically roughly 40,000 abortions a year. Horrible, horrible number. They're estimating we may double that. Double. And they're building, just in Carbondale, Illinois, we just sued them because that very liberal city council enacted a bubble zone to try to stop sidewalk counseling in front of the city's abortion clinics. They had no abortion clinics in October of last year. They now have 2, and Planned Parenthood is building a mega clinic down there right now. They're trying to turn that into the hub of abortion for the southeastern United States, because every other state around us has more restrictive laws, and the whole southeast is really coming together to nearly ban abortion. So we're working down there. But in Springfield, it's one thing to allow lots of abortion, pay for it, do everything they want to do on the state level, which is, it's offensive and horrible, but now they've taken the next step. They want to shut down the crisis pregnancy centers. And all of the pregnancy help ministries, not just pregnancy centers, but sidewalk counseling that is ancillary to pregnancy centers. And they have this bill called Senate Bill 1909. Governor's promised to sign it. It's on his desk. Once he stops his tour around the state talking about how he spent all our money, he's presumably going to sign it. And so you're going to see us. We've been working very hard to prepare the lawsuit on that. I think you're going to be very pleased when you see it. I think you're going to be happy with it. We've got the NIFLA, if you know them, of Supreme Court fame. We're going to retain. We're representing them. They retained us, I guess, along with our friends at First Liberty, and we're going to sue very, very vigorously to try to protect our rights there. Because, and you're going to clap for lawyers suing. I'm going to take that all day long. Thank you. Yes, but with that lawsuit coming up, they want to turn pro-life speech into a deceptive business practice. And in the bill itself, it says, it complains about what we're saying, that we're being too mean to the abortionists, the abortion business, and the abortion procedure. They don't want us to talk about what the reality of abortion is. In fact, they were saying, well, you're connecting abortion has you're saying abortion has links to infertility potentially, may increase a cancer risk, and you are concealing a material fact that the General Assembly claims that abortion is 14 times deadlier than childbirth. Now, I got to tell you, I've seen the statistics, and every good study that's out there will show, and it's unfortunate, that for women who have had abortions, within a year, they're more likely to be deceased than one who's had a baby. And those are the good studies and all that. So we're going to fight that in court, but it's something that I'll tell you, we worked well together in Springfield. We beat them like crazy on the witness slips in the committees. The legislators were beautiful. I mean, you've got some wonderful, faithful people in Springfield who are working so hard for you, and it is hard, very hard in this environment, tougher than anything I ever had to experience when I was down there. And we really did a good, strong, like the whole Christian community, all people of faith really got together to really fight this, and that is going to result in a good lawsuit at the end of the day. I will give you one. There was an exchange on the floor during the House floor debate, and you'll indulge me since that was my chamber. One of our pro-life champions, he was able to ask a question of the chief sponsor, the pro-abortion chief sponsor, and he said, now, Representative, under your bill, would it be a deceptive business practice to say that abortion is a sin? Okay, I mean, you're hitting me on the free exercise clause, you're hitting me on free speech, you're clinging all my constitutional bells there. Now, and not just asking this, the representative, the Attorney General himself was sitting next to the representative. Kwame Raoul came to the House floor for that debate and plopped himself right next to that representative. He's the chief law enforcement officer, he's the chief enforcer of this bill. And the question, is it a deceptive business practice to say that abortion is a sin? And do you know what her answer was? The Attorney General would address that on a case-by-case basis. Now, for me, that's like my Super Bowl. I was like, spike the football, we're going to Disneyland. That's a good one. For you, I'm sorry. But, and that particular, the legislator called me on his way home from Springfield, and I'll tell you, look, again, for those folks down there, it is tough. They knew they were going to lose this fight, but what they were able to do was really create a great record that we can use to show the absurdity of the other side's position and to fight effectively going forward. So look, like everything here in Illinois, it's a mixed bag. But, the good Lord didn't tell us, he didn't promise us unicorns and rainbows. He said, take up your cross. And that didn't end well on a natural basis, and then it ended wonderfully on a supernatural basis. So that's kind of where we're at. We're a people that know suffering, but we know that joy is coming. So thank you for having me here tonight. It's great to speak with you. All right.
I got a question. Okay. What can people in this room do to help you win this potential court case against SB 1909?
Your prayers are very important. If you want to send us money, we can do that too. Send them money. Yes. No. But no. We really pray for us. We are busy here. I have to tell you. Look. This is home. This is more personal. We will do this. We do this across the country. We've got cases pending all over the place I could tell you all about. But this is our backyard, and it makes me angry. I think I have a holy and righteous anger about this particular measure, and so we're looking forward to litigating it vigorously. So, thank you, Mutz. What's that? Look, see, this is the thing. So I can't promise you the result. I can promise you our legal arguments are sound. And my goodness, abortion is a sin, case-by-case basis. I'm sitting there going, we're supposed to pre-clear our speech. I think that is illegal, but But again, you know what? I got to convince a district judge, and then I got to defend that decision on appeal, hopefully a positive decision at the Seventh Circuit, which is, again, it's a tough road. I mean, and that's the place we've come, you know. But again, folks, we are in so much better shape than we were 10 years ago. And I've been at this now for 16 years, and I have seen things, seen them better, seen them worse. They're getting better in the big picture. I mean, as we got a lot of work to do in Illinois, but again, it's, you know, we're going to get there, guys. But boy, it'll be a tough one on the way. So thanks again, Monty. All right, God bless.
Yeah.